Greetings, fellow detectives. Wizard Kitten here, bringing you a new build in my series, Building Nancy Drew in The Sims 4. Today, we are doing another build that is completely inspired off of the aesthetic, the mystery, the color scheme of one single Nancy Drew game. I let my patrons over at Mystique Manor decide on the order for this build series. We started with Danger on Deception Island. The game with the second most votes that we did last time was Treasure in the Royal Tower. And then the third game was a tie between several games. And so I just kind of chose which one I decided I wanted to do today. And I went with Sea of Darkness because we have been getting some beautiful, wonderful snow here in Minnesota. And so I really wanted to just go all out on the snowy vibes and live in my happy place, which is a nice little winter wonderland. It's one of the things I love the most about Sea of Darkness. It is one of my top 5 favorite Nancy Drew games, which is something that I didn't expect when I initially played it. But a big part of why it's my favorite is because of how just wonderfully it captures the feeling of a cold, snowy night. The northern lights within the game are absolutely beautiful. The gently falling snow is absolutely stunning. And there's a very cozy just kind of feeling and aesthetic to all of the buildings and all of the locations within the game itself, which is something that I wanted to really try and capture in this particular build. So I went on Pinterest to try and find inspiration for what Icelandic homes look like because I have no idea. I have never been to Iceland. I don't know anyone from Iceland, and I haven't seen a lot of Iceland in media beyond Sea of Darkness, quite honestly. So I looked on Pinterest and I immediately saw that a lot of the inspiration images had this cottage kind of style home that was almost built into the landscape. So this house has kind of a turf roof, which I saw in a lot of the inspiration images, and I tried to surround it entirely with vines and plants, and then also use some terrain painting to really kind of envelop the cottage into the landscaping, into the hills of this particular location. It seems like that's a very common theme in a lot of the inspiration images that I was finding. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but Pinterest seemed to suggest that. So that's what I went with, and it was very fun. This is a style that I really haven't built much with before. I've built cottages certainly before, but not like Icelandic, Scandinavian type style cottages. So this was a lot of fun. I don't usually use terrain paint either, so playing around with that was kind of fun as well. It's interesting because some of the plants were able to get snowy and some of them weren't, just because of the overhang of the roof. So some of them are perfectly green and some of them are completely covered in snow, and then some of them are completely bare because it's winter and they've lost all of their leaves. So that was a bit of a challenge, trying to get the plants to sit at an appropriate level and not float in the air due to the terrain paint was also a bit of a challenge. But ultimately, I think it comes together. It was difficult too because I think buildings like this look fantastic in real life. In The Sims, when you have a big long wall without anything going on, it just doesn't look very good. It needs more dimension to it. It needs something to break it up. And so that was another reason why I really relied quite heavily on the landscaping and putting in a ton of plants and vines, because otherwise it would have just been one big long stone wall, which again looks beautiful in real life, but in The Sims looks kind of unfinished. So that was my goal there. I really enjoyed the black paneling out the front as well. I thought it contrasted so beautifully with the snow. But we are already moving on to the interior of this build, and I again just wanted to experiment a little bit. This style really pushed me out of my usual kind of building style, and it made me try some new things, which I really enjoyed. So I wanted to add a few more architectural elements to the interior of this home based on the inspiration images that I found on Pinterest. The inspiration images had a lot of wood paneling going in different directions, very old wood paneling, like original to the cottages type wood paneling, which is very difficult to find in The Sims. We did get these cool columns from the Werewolves game pack that are not perfectly straight. They have a little bit of a curve to them, so I wanted to use those because that was giving me that kitty wampus style that I was trying to go for. And then I play around with a bunch of different walls, a bunch of different floors to try and find something that ends up working. And I also really wanted to add in beams, because that was another thing that was very present in the inspiration images, was kind of like a cabin aesthetic in addition to the cottage kind of feel. It's like if cabin and cottage met and became a house. That's what I was seeing in a lot of the inspiration images, with lots of wood, which again was a challenge because finding wood tones that match within The Sims can be complex. It can be quite the journey. You can start with one and think you're going to go with brown like I did here, and then you end up going in a completely different direction and going more whitish gray. And I tried to use this white paint as an accent in areas as well, something I also saw in the inspiration images. And I use that white paint in the bedrooms, and there's also a stone wall that I use as well. It did take me quite a while to get the beams how I wanted them. At first there were just too many, and then it felt like it was a little weird that they were all going the same direction, and they aren't perfect by any means. They do add a little bit of interest if you are playing from a Sims view kind of level. So like when we do the tour, you can see the beams on the ceiling and everything. From a bird's eye view, which is normally how you play with a household, they do kind of get in the way sometimes. So again, I did want to take away a few, try and make them a little less unobtrusive, try to make them less obtrusive, more unobtrusive. But I like how they looked, and I liked the interest that they gave this house. It's something new, it's something different, it's something that's not in every Sims build. Gives it a little bit of intrigue, which I appreciated. I also really enjoyed getting to use all of these very rustic feeling textures, just with the stone floors and the stone walls, the kind of unfinished wood flooring, like I mentioned, the slightly curved columns, the iron lamps hanging from the beams, and then iron wall lamps with candles inside them. And then when you couple those rustic elements with these very kind of clean woods and sleek styles like we have here in the kitchen, I feel like that's what really gives it kind of that that style that I was seeing in the inspiration images that makes it look Icelandic. I also keep saying Scandinavian. Iceland is not in Scandinavia, but it's got similar vibes. So a lot of the inspiration I kind of pulled from that as well, with the kind of wood tones that I was choosing, and the sort of minimalist meets rustic, I suppose, is what we're going for. That's something that I see pretty frequently in these kinds of designs, and I really, really love how it looks. I think it's absolutely stunning. I love when modern meets rustic. I think it just works really nicely. That would be honestly my dream kind of design one day. Maybe not in this exact style, but kind of like a rustic log cabin meets beautiful minimalist nature tone kind of designs as well. So I had a lot of fun with this. And again, building in the exact same place where we built the Treasure in the Royal Tower build in San Myshuno, because it's one of the lots that's snowy no matter what season it is, which is nice to have. It kind of limits where I can build, because this is one of the only places that's snowy all the time without having to change the season or like load up a new save file that's only winter or something. But regardless, it's a beautiful location with lots of beautiful trees all around, and really was giving me the cozy vibes that I was wanting for this place. A lot of the coziness was inspired by Magnus's house, which we get to visit in game. His little his little house is kind of similar to the inspiration images that I was finding, in that it's built into the hillside. It's got a lot of cozy blankets and cozy, comfortable things to sit on, his bed, Tumi's big bed, all sorts of just cozy elements. So that was a big inspiration for especially this living room, was trying to kind of match the style of the build with the white, a lot of white elements, and a lot of rustic and cozy elements. Very, I'm not going to say it correctly, very hygge, I think that's how you say it, Hygge. Very hygge is kind of what I was going for, which is just literally like an aesthetic of coziness, which I think encapsulates Sea of Darkness almost entirely as a game. It's just an atmosphere of coziness. As we start to decorate here, hopefully you'll start to see some of the inspiration of Sea of Darkness in the decor for this build. Basically, lots of ships, because Sea of Darkness, of course, takes place primarily on the Herligheid, surrounding the Herligheid, within the game. So I wanted there to be ships and nautical themed items basically throughout the entire build, which is also very similar to a lot of the decor that we used for the Danger on Deception Island build, but in different styles. The Danger on Deception Island build was very coastal, whereas this is very like cozy nautical, which it's interesting that there's so much overlap between those styles, and yet they are so distinctly different, because I feel like while this place utilizes a lot of very similar items as the Danger on Deception Island build that I did, I think that it's also completely different. Like, it has a totally different feel, and that was fun. That's kind of what I was hoping for too. I didn't want it to feel exactly the same, despite the similarities that those two games have. I wanted to make sure to put lots of blanket baskets and pillows all over the place. The cozier this place felt, the more successful I thought I was being. And a lot of that came down to just adding in lots of soft items, things that people would use regularly in real life for coziness. There's also, like, just as an example of that, mugs scattered around the house. There's one in the office, there's one in the bedroom, there's a couple in the kitchen, and I just love to imagine the sim living here, wandering around with a warm cup of cocoa, warm cup of coffee, warm cup of tea, just whatever warm beverage, grabbing a blanket from their cozy little living room area, lighting a fire in their beautiful little fireplace, cuddling with their dog, because eventually I will add in some dog-themed items. In fact, I think I'm about to do it here, to symbolize Tumi in the game. Tumi in Sea of Darkness is one of the only pets that we see in the series, and is easily the best executed pet in the entire series. Just the way that Tumi was animated, the detail of Tumi, absolutely incredible. 100% good doggo. Both in design and in reality, Tumi is extremely adorable. So I wanted to make sure to have that in honor of the fact that this game did include a pet, and very few Nancy Drew games do, so I wanted to pay homage to Tumi. We're moving on to the main bedroom space here. This house could definitely be a 2-bedroom house. I envisioned it more for a single sim, perhaps a young couple, but I kind of imagined it for a single sim. And the single sim has a lot of the archaeology tools within this build, so I use the other bedroom as a home office with an archaeology station. I kind of was using Soren as inspiration for that, because I was trying to think of other ways to incorporate Sea of Darkness into this build, and Soren is essentially an archaeologist studying nautical Icelandic history, and he specializes in ceremonial pointy objects, basically spears, axes, swords. I really wanted to find an axe or a hatchet to put on the wall in this build. If you know, you know, but there wasn't one in the game, so I had to settle for swords, but we will eventually do that. The bedroom is mostly inspired by the Icelandic interior designs that I was finding, as well as a bunch of nautical inspired items. I decorated it with just lots of wood tones, and then like the ship's wheel that we have here, the fishing pole that we have. I wanted to use some more of the Dream Home Decorator items because I feel like those are very Hygge, which again, I don't think I'm saying that correctly. And I wanted to fill the closet with lots of warm clothes. So I used the one that looks like it has a winter coat. I feel like blue and yellow are kind of similar strong colors within Sea of Darkness, blue and gold more specifically. So when I wasn't sticking with kind of a neutral color scheme of the white, both to symbolize the snow and also just because it seems popular within the design inspiration images that I was finding, but also then using blue and gold and lots of brown as well to kind of pull in the Sea of Darkness vibes. On this bookshelf here, I put a couple of knickknacks that reminded me of Sea of Darkness. I found a knit penguin. Penguins not living in Iceland, but inspired by the cold feeling, I decided to put a penguin. The snow globe with a lighthouse, since Nancy does go to a lighthouse within the game. And then I find a treasure map. I also did put a couple of these little bird portraits, a seagull, a crow, all of the nautical inspired postcards, a little dog bed for Tumi, lots of just little inspiration things to try and pull in those Sea of Darkness vibes. For the bathroom, I thought about doing a couple different things and eventually settled on going with the very rustic homemade wood bathroom set. The sink is not homemade, it's from the fitness stuff pack. But the rest of it is actually things that your sim can craft if they are handy enough within the game. And I just like how it looked. It reminded me a lot of a sauna, which I feel like is very North Atlantic kind of inspired. Another ship painting, because I tried to use as many as possible to get those nautical vibes. And here we're moving on to the home office space, which again is designed with the Icelandic style in mind, and then filled in with a bunch of decor objects that reminded me of Sea of Darkness, primarily on the other side. So yeah, if you do end up downloading this and having a sim play in this, I imagined that the sim who lives here is an archaeologist. In The Sims, that means that they would go to not Iceland, and they would not be an archaeologist of pointy ceremonial objects like Soren was. Unfortunately, that would be kind of cool. But I imagined that this particular archaeologist also specializes in ceremonial knives. So most of the archaeology objects that I put over here at this station are the knives. There's like a bronze one. I think there's a couple other ones, but yeah, they specialize in knives just like Soren. I'm not sure. I think in my head, they also specialize in nautical kind of archaeology. It's just not possible in The Sims. With Jungle Adventure, you have to go to more of like a rainforest-inspired location for any archaeology that your sim might do. But I decorated the room still with nautical things, and in my head, like to imagine that that's the kind of archaeologist they are. So yeah, that's basically the style that we're going for, all of the items that we're going for. The only other room left to decorate is the upper level. I wanted to make that level more useful and bigger than it actually ended up being, but then the house just didn't look quite right the way the roofs were, the way the roofs work in The Sims 4. It needed to be smaller in order to also look like the inspiration images that I was doing. The house needed to be more rectangular than square. So it ended up being quite small. I decided to use it as a storage space and as a very cozy little reading nook. So there's a reading nook up here. I'm would imagine that our archaeologist needs to do quite a bit of reading throughout the day, plus just making a cozy little reading nook up in the attic at this frosted window felt extremely cozy to me, which again is what we are going for with the game. Also just very solitary, which is something I also feel like Sea of Darkness really pushes as a vibe, that kind of like solitary quiet feeling. So I thought the reading nook did that quite nicely as well. But yeah, that's what we went for. We went for our Icelandic style exterior and interior, lots of wood tones, blue and gold, lots of neutral colors, and very, very cozy and nautical. But I think we should jump into the game now. I'll give you a little tour of the final product, and you can all see what you think. All right, fellow detectives, here we are in game for the tour of our final version of our build for Sea of Darkness, inspired by Sea of Darkness. On the outside, we have the Icelandic inspired exterior with the black paneling and the stone walls kind of grown into the landscape like so many of the inspiration images. So lots of ivy and bushes, some terrain paint kind of enveloping the house itself, and the red doors just kind of for a fun pop of color, and of course snow, because we are in a Sea of Darkness inspired game and therefore snow is definitely required. But if we head inside of our Sea of Darkness inspired cabin here, we have the little dog corner, the pet food area to symbolize Tumi from the game. Nice little entrance area here, a very cozy little living room space here, more accessible from around this corner with a cozy fireplace and lots of nautical inspired items, lots of Icelandic inspired colors, a eat-in dining room, and then full kitchen here with a nice little coffee pot station, very cozy stone walls again kind of enclosing the space. And then if we go through this hallway, we see there's a few doors. There's also an entryway into kind of like this little mudroom storage space, laundry room area, and just kind of storage rack. This first door here, we have the main bedroom with, again, lots of nautical inspired items, lots of Scandinavian, Icelandic inspired colors and design elements, with the paintings on the wall here with the sailboats, very island kind of inspired, and a penguin to symbolize the cold, a treasure map to symbolize the treasure of Sea of Darkness, a lighthouse, since we go to a lighthouse in the game as well. To the second door, we have the bathroom for the build, just a nice simple bathroom with lots of wood tones to kind of carry through that Icelandic style. And then this other room here could be another bedroom, but I have it set up as an office for an archaeologist to kind of symbolize the archaeology elements of the game. This particular archaeologist specializes in weapons, just like the archaeologist that we get to know in Sea of Darkness. And then the only other space of this build is the upper level little attic space, which can be accessed through the ladder on the lower level. So if you go up the ladder here, then the sim can check out this very nice level up here with a cute little reading nook just over in this corner, very cozy, and then mostly storage. So this is mostly kind of like an attic space with the Christmas decorations, a very mysterious treasure chest in the back here, all sorts of goodies. So yeah, that is our final version of our build inspired by Nancy Drew's Sea of Darkness. I do hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that it gives you Nancy Drew Sea of Darkness vibes. Please let me know in the comment section down below what you think of this build, and if you're getting Sea of Darkness from it, or if you're getting Iceland from it. And as always, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more Nancy Drew and Sims 4 content. Thank you so much for watching, fellow detectives. I will see you soon.